to the 529th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome, and thanks for listening. Well, unfortunately, I had a great episode with Dr. Jan Vlek, who is a family physician who finished the Western States Trail 100 over the age of 70. He was one of 6 people attempting it. And it's the second time in my podcasting career that I've had a complete drop of an episode, recording failure. So we may get that back in the future. I may get another opportunity to connect with him, but otherwise I'm going to share you a few things that we talked about and learned, and I think it goes with some other things that happened this week. So we'll make it the best of a bad situation, perhaps. But I consider him a success story. He started running at the age of 65, ultra marathons. He'd been doing marathons earlier than that, and decided that Western States was on his bucket list, so to speak, ever since he had run the Western States course early in his running career, just to kind of do a training camp. But anyway, he completed the race. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of the details, but some of the pearls and wisdom that he used. One, he was very well trained, so he paid extreme amount of attention to detail in his training. He made sure that he had the mileage. He increased his mileage substantially, and he made sure that he had the climbing. It's a mountainous trail race. If you haven't heard of it, Western States is one of the oldest ultra marathons out there. So he made sure that he had done his fair amount of climbing, that he knew he was ready for the race before he got there. He did everything possible to prepare. Dr. Vlek looked for the positive. If he troubleshooted or he had an issue, he would try to turn it into positive. Nutrition was an opportunity to do something. He also thought that it was not zero when he started. So he was very confident that he was going to get the job done because he was very well prepared. And he had a very positive mental outlook on things. And it was a great story. So I hope I get to interview him in the future. The next success story that I would like to talk about a little bit is I've been listening to some interviews and Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, and while I'm doing some walking, and it's very interesting that his take and perspective is very, very similar. In my family, this term has been used, and I've actually heard this term used from a new member, and it's a little off color, but it's doing things either half-assed or doing them pretty good, or pain is gain. And that is kind of how Arnold Schwarzenegger describes his training, his acting career, how he studied for parts, whether it was learning to sword fight, ride a horse, do stunts, or even being governor, memorizing speeches, reading things over and over again. But he talked about, especially in the bodybuilding aspect of things, meticulous, detailed. And so when he was training his biceps, he would look at his biceps and he would think about his biceps, and he made sure he did enough reps. And when he got pain, that's when he was starting to achieve something. And when he did enough reps on memorizing a script or memorizing speech, he knew he was ready. And so he had the confidence to do something. And he talked about people that he would see in the gym that, kind of did a half. They would do the pull down machine and they wouldn't let it go all the way up and they wouldn't pull all the way down. Or they would quit early and not do enough reps or not train hard enough. And he described one loss that he had, his, I believe, first Mr. Olympian attempt. And he lost because he thought his abs weren't defined enough and his calves weren't defined enough. And so he went back and he paid meticulously detailed to training these areas that a lot of people neglect. And he said maybe he didn't win after that. He did win the subsequent Mr. Olympians, but maybe that wasn't the reason, but it wasn't the reason that he lost. And so I think these things go together as far as training to do something or focusing to change your lifestyle or becoming plant-based or having an exercise program. It's attention to detail. A lot of people say they want to get healthy or they want to get in shape, but they have no idea how they're going to accomplish that. So they may do their plant-based diet when it's convenient, when they're at home, and then when they go out and things get tough, they just kind of let it go. People will tell me that their plant-based diet, they're 60% plant-based, or they're 70% plant-based. Sometimes they say they're 90% plant-based, and I have no idea how they come up with that. Or they do pretty good. But oftentimes it's not good enough to get them where they're going, especially if somebody is really having some health problems or crisis. And so the idea is, what's your goal? What's your specific goal? Is it to lose weight? Is it to keep your cancer from coming back? Is it to reverse your heart disease? Is it to achieve a specific cholesterol number perhaps? But what is the goal and how are you going to actually accomplish it? And again, I think it goes back to we're not sure how to do things. We just kind of, stumble through. And the most important thing is time. And to me, time we have on this earth, time that we have to do things that we really want. And by squandering some of these opportunities, we waste a lot of time and don't get to what we're actually trying to achieve, because we kind of do things half-heartedly, to put another way, or pretty good. And we give ourselves pretty good. Another word for pretty good is I'm trying. When people tell me I'm trying to do something, usually it means that they're pretty sure they're falling short of what it is they're actually trying to do. And one of the ways you can look at things is, again, like Dr. Vlek did, is how do you make these efforts be more positive or be more of a challenge that you accept and that you look forward to? Because you have to want to do a challenge in order to do it day in and day out. If you're training for something, or again, you're changing your lifestyle, it has to be something that you're trying to do day in and day out to the best of your ability that day. Today may be better than yesterday, but you'd like tomorrow to be better than today, if that is your progress and journey. And none of us are perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We fall short. Arnold talked about, places that he's fallen short, and we all know where those were. And everybody falls short. But the idea is, how do you get the best results for the time that you are putting into things? And so, one of the ways that you can do that is to, make things a challenge or an opportunity. So when it comes to traveling and eating out, people say, I can't find food, or there was nothing on the menu. That's translated, there's nothing on the menu that I like. There's usually a way around it. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to have the conversation that people that you're traveling with, that you can't eat at that particular restaurant. You may have to make a compromise and not necessarily eat what you want there, as far as maybe you just have a salad if they're not willing. If it's a restaurant that they really want to go to, then you may have to compromise a tremendous amount, and hopefully they'll compromise a tremendous amount for you to go to a restaurant that offers plant-based foods. It may be such that you need to go to a grocery store. That's always an option. In just about any town, you can find something that you can make that's plant-based and healthy. Even if you back it all the way down to eating a whole head of iceberg lettuce if you had to. There's plenty of iron in iceberg lettuce. So you can back things down, but again, you're looking to see that you're getting the basics that you want in your diet. Are you getting nitric oxide producing greens? Maybe it's a bag of frozen vegetables at a grocery store. Maybe it's a prepared salad. Maybe, you're picking up a few things to take back to the hotel afterwards. And I even stumbled upon, and when we were traveling, I stumbled upon it as well. And I always look at what's in it, but I always find some of these freeze-dried meals very, very interesting. And I pulled some of them up online, and they're actually not bad at all. They don't have a tremendous amount of sodium or a tremendous amount of fat. They do have a fair amount of protein, so all you have to do is to find a place where there's some way to heat up water. Most hotels have breakfast, so there's going to be a microwave down there, and you can get utensils and plates in the kitchen at a hotel. But if you had to, you could pack some of these freeze-dried meals to take along with you. If you're traveling for extended periods of time, maybe you're taking some of the beans that are in bags or whatever. But again, most of the time you can find a grocery store, but those freeze-dried meals could be an option if you had to, and would allow you to stick to your guns as far as your calorie count and your nitric oxide producing vegetables and your plant-based meals. Maybe you can figure out something better. Typically, you learn to make things better as you go. So maybe suffering a little bit and not getting what you want makes you think a little bit ahead of time the next time, so you're sure. We tend to check out places that we're going, restaurants that are available, restaurants that are on the way, grocery stores that are on the way. So we've thought about it ahead of time. And you don't let yourself get to the point where I'm starving and I'll just eat anything and I'll compromise what I'm looking for. The same thing goes with, exercise routines. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you just trying to put in so many minutes a week? Can you do better? Can you increase your walking pace? It always makes it fun if you make yourself a challenge. I have a new coach, and she is giving me some challenges. And I have to play some games with myself because I'm doing some prolonged walking on the treadmill at elevation and now with a weighted vest. And I'm trying to get my walking pace up. I've had Jeff Galloway, who is probably the inventor of the run-walk method for training for a long race, like a half marathon or a marathon or ultras. And certainly during ultra marathons, you walk at some point, whether it's walking the hills or walking at the end because you're tired. But the idea of a run-walk method in some endurance event is to allow your body to recover a little bit so that you can keep going longer. And in the past, I've looked at it a little bit negatively in that, I've got to run faster to be able to walk. And the walk has been a recovery, maybe lackadaisical, or I'm just walking to put in this time, and I'm trying to recover, but you don't quite get your walk is not that fast. That means you have to run faster, and your walk is not of good form. So when you go to run, it takes you a little bit to get the run back. And so it's never really worked out all that well for me. And my new coach has me focusing on walking pace. And the idea is walk like you don't want to get past. And I think that's a really good analogy, when you're out on a walk. Walk like you don't want to get past. Walk like you're going someplace. Walk like you're in a hurry. Look at your form to see how you're walking. I talked with a guy today that, sometimes you overstride when you walk and can throw things off. But quick cadence is, something that needs to be practiced. Good hip mobility is something that needs to be practiced. So it's attention to that little detail about walking that can make a difference and improve, my goal of finishing in a certain time or doing a certain race. So that's one idea of, how you pay attention to detail. And the same thing, it goes with weightlifting. Do you have a plan when you go to the gym, or do you just go and wander around? You're going to give yourself an hour. People say I was at the gym for an hour, but how much time were you actually doing something while you were at the gym? And, were you doing the machines the proper way, or were you just kind of bouncing from machine to machine with no goal and plan? Those are things that, it's better off if you think about what you're going to do before you get there, rather than just kind of going through various machines and doing the same thing day in and day out. It's attention to detail that might get you a little bit further. So, everybody comes back, when you start looking, I look at successful people, whether they're successful in business, successful in athletics, successful in their health journey. What do they all have in common? And they pay attention to detail, and they do things the best that they can, whatever it is. My mom used to go to Zumba, and she'd say, that person back there, they're just going through the motions, but she was really trying and, made it her best effort every time she went to Zumba because she wanted to do her best. And I think that separates people. That separates people that have success at doing things versus people that have struggles. And a lot of times you just don't know why you're having the struggles. It's just that, lack of attention to detail. And you feel good after you've done that, because you see a direct result of what's going on. So give that a shot in whatever it is that you're looking into. And certainly in our practice, we like to help people. We like to help people troubleshoot. Sometimes they think there's no oil in my diet, I'm 100% this, and turns out that they're not getting the nutrients that they need, or the percentage of macronutrients perhaps that they need to be successful. They're hungry all the time, so they end up snacking. So we can help with a lot of those details. And certainly we'll hold your feet to the fire if you're training for something or you want to get in shape, because I do believe that, you either move it or lose it. Motion is lotion. I talked to, a guy today, and we talked about range of motion. And, some people, I see people, in the practice when we have squat challenges or certain things, and they do a little bit of one. And maybe it's all they can do that day. So a little bit one of a squat is better than a complete squat, or a squat as far as they can go, taking their time. But sometimes it's just kind of going through the motions because maybe we're afraid of what's going to happen. So the idea is to, again, let's keep the best range of motion that we possibly can, because let's face it, it becomes, if you don't move like you did when you're 6. So if you just, if you're not moving, you're going to lose range of motion. So we want to fight to keep the range of motion that we have in our extremities. And to do that, we have to pay attention to doing those exercises in a detailed fashion. It wouldn't be right if I didn't talk about an alternative diet. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about a ketogenic diet. Often people, friends, they have friends that are on a keto diet and they lose a lot of weight, and they're so happy that they lost weight, and they lost weight quick. And one of the problems with losing weight quick is that you lose muscle mass. And in a ketogenic diet, a typical ketogenic diet, it is very high fat and extremely low carbohydrate, but it's also pretty low in protein, can be around 10%. And 10% protein is adequate most of the time. But if someone is exercising heavily and they're not getting enough protein, they can break down that protein for glucose, because some of our organs do run on glucose. So over time, people on a prolonged ketogenic diet have been shown to lose muscle mass and also lose bone mass. But the question comes, especially in a person with glucose intolerance or diabetes, what does it do to your diabetes? People will come in and tell me my hemoglobin A1C or so-and-so's hemoglobin A1C was perfect on a ketogenic diet. And I'm trying to do this plant-based diet, and I'm not having, near the results that, my friend has been having. And I'll tell them, it's like, well, your glucose, if you're not taking in any glucose, so let's say you eat a piece of bacon and you check your glucose right after you eat the piece of bacon, you're not going to have an increase in rise in glucose, because that bacon was predominantly fat with some protein. So you're not eating glucose. So you're not going to see a rise into your bloodstream of glucose. If you eat an apple, you'll see a rise in your glucose, and then it will come down. And depending on your glucose tolerance, it is how long does it take your glucose to come back to that 90 to 100 range. And people that have normal glucose tolerance, it's within the 2-hour range that their glucose will come back to normal. It also depends on what you eat, how much fiber, and other things. But if you're just eating a high-fat, very low carbohydrate diet, your glucose is going to be normal, and your hemoglobin A1C may drop, but does that cure your diabetes? And so this study that was done looks at mice fed a variety of different diets. And the interesting thing about this study is they looked at the mice over a year. So they took healthy mice, not fat mice, not mice with diabetes, but they took healthy mice and put them on either a ketogenic diet or a high-fat diet that was so it had more protein in it, or a low-fat diet that was more of a normal diet, but a low-fat, not a diabetic diet, but a normal macronutrient, but 30% fat, carbohydrate, so a kind of a balanced carbohydrate, fat, and protein diet. And they looked at them over the year, and they looked to see what actually happened. And they looked at their liver, they looked at their blood test, and they look at their pancreas and try to determine what happened over time. And it was extremely interesting because, again, in the human world, a ketogenic diet has had some merit with children with epilepsy that showed decreased seizure activity with a very high-fat diet, but it was very, very hard for them to sustain over time. The same thing happens in adults that are trying to do a ketogenic diet. Almost everybody talks about a cheat day or a cheat period, or they come off of the ketogenic diet. And so what happens when you no longer follow a ketogenic diet? Most people don't do a keto diet forever. Again, there are these cheat days. And so how does it affect your body? And unfortunately, our bodies are very smart. They try to adapt. They try to keep us alive despite our best efforts of doing things. And so things, kind of adjust over time, and one would expect that. And that's exactly what they saw in the mice. So when you eat a high-fat diet, you produce ketones, and ketone bodies are what the brain uses for fuel. And so they saw that increased with the ketogenic diet, more so than the other diets. And it did go up with the high-fat diet, but not near as much as the ketogenic diet. They saw that their glucose went down, but they also saw that their insulin went down. And you might say at first, well, their insulin went down because they're not having glucose, so they don't need the insulin as much. But as they looked at some of the markers associated with aging and mTOR, they started to see an increase of those markers. So it became more inflammatory over time. The mice actually gained weight over time. So mice on a long-term ketogenic diet that had unrestricted feeding, so they could eat as much of that as they wanted versus a high-fat versus a low-fat diet, they actually gained more weight. And then the low-fat people, or low-fat mice, continued to, stay pretty much the same and on an even keel. And that's probably an adaptation. At first, fat makes you feel full. So over time, you might say that their cravings or lack of glucose may have led them to actually eat more. The other thing that happened was that when they were given glucose, they had glucose intolerance. And what happened when they looked at their pancreas was that their pancreas, and specifically the islet cells, they started to produce less insulin. So it wasn't that they couldn't uptake the glucose as much as they actually weren't producing insulin. So their pancreas actually had an adverse effect from a long-term ketogenic diet. The same thing happened in the liver. The liver became fatty, and they had different changes of their liver function and liver function tests that they developed a fatty liver. They developed high triglycerides. All of those would be a risk for developing vascular disease in a human. So you could postulate that perhaps over time, again, the ketogenic diet, thank goodness most people can't maintain it, but it's probably not good for liver health over time in addition to pancreas health. So we know that their muscle mass goes down and there's a risk of osteoporosis, but this is probably much more concerning that there's a risk of pancreatic disease and a risk of liver disease on a long-term ketogenic diet. So again, I think that we have to be really, really careful with fad diets, and I'll even throw a vegan diet and a plant-based diet in on that we want to maintain a healthy diet with a healthy amount of macronutrients rather than, being so all one macronutrient. I think that, I've seen people on a plant-based diet also suffer from perhaps going to extremes and not getting enough nutrients, not getting enough protein, as well as or eating a junk food vegan and not getting anywhere with that either. So our body tries to adapt however it can to make us sustain ourselves. So there's always a drawback. And when I come to it, when I look, overall, I think that eating a plant-based diet allows you to more easily adapt and make sure that you're getting the macronutrients that you're needing. It's certainly, we don't want people eating a tremendous amount of oils, but when you're eating oil from avocado, a few nuts and seeds as far as condiments go, there's fat in tofu, there's a little fat in beans. You get the fatty acids that you need. Certainly, we pay attention to omega-3 fatty acids from chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds. We also see, omega-3s in beans and in greens. So in a plant-based diet, we drip in the macronutrients and micronutrients from a variety of sources because we're eating a wide variety. And that's what's important with a plant-based diet. So if you're not eating a wide variety, then that can be a problem. Just like a ketogenic diet becomes very narrow in its focus. So a wide variety, colorful plant-based diet, you're probably not going to go wrong with. But again, it's good to have some lab work checked. It's good to assess, your physical capabilities when people are tired or they're losing muscle mass. Did they lose muscle mass or did they lose fat mass? Those are things that you want to assess over time. The other thing that happened with the mice study is the longer they did the ketogenic diet, the worse, the more impairment that they had. So, again, short bouts of something is one thing. But long-term effects, and again, I've seen numerous patients that get into trouble with cardiovascular disease from prolonged ketogenic diet. They're happy because their glucose is down, they can monitor their glucose, but they're not seeing what's happening on the other side. So, and again, a high-fat diet, especially even if we're plant-based, if it's going to be high in omega-6s, more inflammatory fatty acids, it could be an issue. Less likely as an issue on a plant-based diet, but certainly if you're on a ketogenic diet, saturated fats, cholesterol, very inflammatory, selecting for a microbiome that's more inflammatory, increased risk for cardiovascular disease. So again, another check mark for ketogenic diets, just not the way to go. Easy fixes are not the way to go. Pain equals gain. And I don't think it should be, again, pain is very much a perspective. When we talk about pain, there's physical pain and there's discomfort and there's mental anguish. And then there's just your attitude on how you actually look at something. But I think that, struggling and, having to put some effort into something, whether you call that pain or not, I think that usually works out in your favor as far as, good outcomes and feeling good about yourself for what you accomplished. The days are starting to become shorter, so our ability to get into the sunlight is actually becoming shorter. The sun is going down. If you're living in northern latitudes, the strength of the sun is also going down. So I just wanted to make a shout out for get out in the sunlight and get your vitamin D, because that vitamin D goes and is processed through your skin. And when we expose our skin to sunlight, 45% of that is red light. So a near red radiation or red light, red in the red frequency and a red wavelength, I should say. And that's actually very protective. We know saunas are great to decrease cardiovascular health. We also know that the red light is actually very good for our eyes as far as decreasing macular degeneration, despite what your ophthalmologist might say. So when you're out in the light in the morning time, you're getting a lot of red light that is actually very good. The sunlight in general on your skin actually helps your body to regenerate melanocytes. So that tan, as long as you can have a little bit of color in your skin, is actually very, very protective. It helps with the production of vitamin D. Vitamin D helps with metabolizing cholesterol and decreasing vascular disease. So the sunlight is very important, and don't be afraid of it, and get all you can here before it starts to get cold on your skin when available. Morning and evening sun is really particularly good for your circadian rhythm. So don't be afraid. We haven't seen a decrease in skin cancer with the invention of sunscreens, and there are multiple carcinogens in sunscreens, and our skin health is actually protected by the melanocytes that we have. So the things that make you tan actually protect your skin. And if you want to look at that, look at someone that doesn't get enough sunlight, that gets perhaps more indoor lighting, more computer lighting, and see what their skin looks like. Pale skin, thin skin, pasty skin. You know, everybody on a plant-based diet is worried about their collagen levels and should they take collagen powder or vegan collagen. Collagen is a peptide, and it's never been shown that eating collagen makes your skin thicker or better or younger. That those peptides are made up of amino acids that our bodies are readily able to make if the substrate's there, and the sunlight provides a lot of the energy to be able to work those reactions. So if you want to preserve your skin, let it get a little tan and preserve your melanocytes. And those melanocytes also, trigger back through your mitochondria. So, all these reactions are tied together, and the sun is actually very, very protective. So we know from the Scandinavian studies that sauna protects. So why wouldn't sunlight protect? We know that sunscreen is not protective. So why not? Why use it in the first place? I'm not advocating going out and getting sunburn, but I am advocating training your skin just like you train your body for anything else. Short periods of time until you have melanocytes that have been stimulated to give you a little tan that are protective and help to support your skin. So think about that the next time you're going out to do your walk, or if you have the opportunity to go outside versus inside, take the opportunity to do something outside. Take the opportunity to carry something heavy outside, so doing some yard work. I remember when we lived up north this time of year, we would start to cut firewood for the fireplaces. So instead of having that firewood hauled to your house and stacked up, help them at least unload the truck and stack up the firewood if you live up north. Perhaps participate in doing some of that prep, raking leaves, all those things that a lot of people hire out are things that can really help make you healthy. Again, a little bit of pain is going to give you a lot of gain when it comes to some of those functions. So your mental outlook will be better as well. Dopamine is generated from all these processes through the sun as well. So everybody knows that we Floridians are happier than anybody else on earth because of the sunshine. And we also know that more depression occurs in the winter months, all jokes aside, when it's darker. So take the opportunity to get light whenever you can, because it does help with some of these processes that help with brain function as well as mood and depression. So walking is wonderful, to get out and take a brisk walk, getting the light, it's all beneficial. If anybody would like some information about the practice, please go on over to drdulaney.com, DoctorDulaney, and check it out. You can email me at Jami, Jami, at drdulaney.com with questions. We'd love to hear from you, and if we can help in any way, we would love to. So thanks again for listening.